So my grandfather, Jacques Cousteau, up here in the corner, that's me when I was about 5 years old, was very involved in Antarctic conservation. He ran an expedition series down there for the undersea world of Jacques Cousteau with my father in the 1970s. They did I believe it's 3-part series down in Antarctica. And then he was very involved in the Madrid Protocol, which was key to the protection of Antarctica. But what we've learned since then is that, it's not enough just to protect the continent of Antarctica. We have to protect a lot more. And of course, my grandfather inspired me to continue, in the spirit of that work. And I've been joined by Ashlan over the last several years, who we met through my work with the BP oil spill. Right there, you see a picture that's all oil from the BP spill. I spent a lot of time covering that. And so,
well, and also I must say that I have been lucky enough to spend a little over a week down into Antarctica as a guest of Scott Base, which is the New Zealand base down there, and right on the edge of the Ross Sea, which is a fabulous MPA. And just to be down in Antarctica just completely blew me away and changed really my whole perspective on what the white continent means for all of us on this planet.
So I'm very jealous too, because I've still not been to Antarctica, hoping to go this year, the end of the year, perhaps the beginning of next year, on an expedition. But in any case, you've probably all heard this, but we figured for those of you who maybe knew or missed out on any ocean presentations, we just want to kind of run through real quick and get us back all in the same baseline of why we should care about the ocean.
Yeah. So first of all, the ocean is, over 70% of our planet. Earth was probably the worst name that we could have picked for this fabulous place that we call home. But the ocean, no matter where you live, it truly touches you every single second of every single day. When we look at food, it provides food, it provides protein for billions of people around the planet. It also controls our climate. So if you like nice weather, you can thank the ocean.
Stable weather.
Yes. And speaking of food, all of the water that falls on land almost always originates from the ocean. So even if you don't eat fish, like us, if you eat vegetables and fruits, the water that actually fed that food came from the ocean.
And the climate and the rain and the weather that gave you a stable rainfall in order to feed those crops is thanks to the ocean. And then finally, of course, the ocean is the key source of oxygen on this planet. In the entire planet, the ocean is responsible for at least half of the oxygen that's been generated, predominantly by phytoplankton, which we will loop back to in just a minute.
Now, we don't want to super depress everybody, but I'm sure, as many of you know, our ocean is facing a lot of issues. Pollution is kind of just the tip of the iceberg. Mm-hmm. We all know about plastic pollution. We know about plastic straws and single-use plastic. We have about 8 million metric tons entering the ocean every year. And that is about one New York City dump truck every minute, dumping plastic directly into the ocean, which is a lot.
And then on top of that, of course, you have climate, warming oceans causing coral bleaching, causing ocean acidification, that is, lowering the pH, so the ocean's getting more acidic. And as we see, tragically, the issues with that is not just an effect on coral reefs, but an effect on any shell-bearing organism, any organism that uses calcium carbonate or binds calcium and carbonate ions, excuse me, to create their shells, or in the case of coral, to create their homes. As the ocean becomes more acidic, that function is being interrupted and impeded. And so there's not as many of those ions for them to be available for them to be able to create their shells. So think of crabs and shrimp and krill and pteropods, tiny little free swimming ocean snails. Many of the things that form the basis of the oceanic food chain and food web are being terribly impacted by ocean acidification.
And what helps when what happens when the bottom of the food web is disrupted? That means everything's disrupted. And that's on top of our overfishing. About 90% of our fish stocks around the world are either fished to capacity or are overfished. So again, all those people that do rely on the ocean for their main source of protein, they're getting screwed.
Yeah.
And another thing that we talk about, Philippe and I are both 40, and in our lifetime, in the last 40 years, we've lost 68% of the global biodiversity. just in our lifetime.
Yeah, it's shocking.
And it's just, it really is. Our ocean is in a bad place, but there is hope. We promise.
So one of the things that we've engaged in over the last year and a half is a program called Antarctica 2020, and that's a campaign and a group of global leaders, politicians, storytellers like ourselves, who are banding together to try and protect 3 new marine protected areas around Antarctica. As I said earlier, my grandfather was very involved in the protection of the continent of Antarctica, but now we recognize that there's no separation, really. The land and the sea are part of one system, and we need to catch up and establish a series of protected areas surrounding Antarctica to make sure that this vital part of the world is protected. We've got a short little video here that was put together by some of our fellow members of Antarctica 2020, Paul Nicklin and Christina Mittermeier, and John Weller at Ocean Only One. And it's a beautiful little video about Antarctica, and we wanted to share it with you. Hopefully the sound will work. We'll see. Sound good, Joe?
Antarctica is the highest, coldest, driest.
And there's subtitles, as I said.
This huge, frozen, remote continent and the waters that surround
Yeah, we're getting some sound.
Terrific.
But they're vital for our survival. They play a huge role in how our planet and climate function. Antarctica houses 90% of the world's ice. It helps keep the planet cool and livable.
It's home to amazing marine life.
The rich currents swirling around the continent, the giant conveyor belts that feed the fish that feed the world. While it may seem vast and remote, it is increasingly fragile and vulnerable. It's on the front line of climate change and biodiversity with making ice and industrial fishing. The global community must stand up and take urgent action to significantly protect it.
In the last 5 years, Antarctica has lost an average of 219 billion tons of ice per year. Pretty large scale marine protected areas are currently proposed the Antarctic Peninsula.
Together, this would ensure the protection of 7 million square kilometers. So the governance framework is in place. The scientific evidence is clear. Only political will is now standing in the way. As the famous Antarctic explorer Ernest Shackleton said, through endurance, we conquer. This is exactly the ethos of the Antarctic 2020 group. We call on the world leaders to join us in owning their commitment to conserve Antarctica for future generations.
So again, what is so important about Antarctica, even though it is so far away and a place that, you know, many people will never ever get the chance to go to, it truly controls so much of our planet. It, because of the vital, rich, nutrient-rich cold waters and this conveyor belt of ocean currents that go all around our globe, it really is the food sources in Antarctica. It's the krill. It's all these tiny little organisms that actually get pushed all around the world that feed oceans around the world. So number one, it's important for food. And again, as Sylvia Earle said in the video, it also controls our climate. It controls our weather. It's the cold currents that move from Antarctica that get pushed around to the warmer temperatures around the equator. And that's what helps keep our planet at a livable temperature.
In addition, this is the key species writer. So this is krill, and you can actually see in its gut here, the green is phytoplankton. And so this is the food in the Southern Ocean and those currents Ashlan was talking about, that is such an important food source that really spreads throughout or spreads the energy throughout the ocean. And this krill is being heavily impacted by fishing, and there are plans predominantly by China and Russia to increase krill fisheries exponentially over the next decade. And so why krill is so important is because it's the food for all of those creatures that we saw just there, the seals, the penguins, the whales, and in particular whales that eat krill. Whale poop is high in iron. Probably didn't think you'd hear the word poop today on this presentation, especially not twice or 3 times. Whale poop is actually high in iron and helps to seed the Southern Ocean for, again, phytoplankton growth. So it's part of this circular ecosystem between the whales and the large animals that eat the krill, that then their waste helps to feed new blooms of these phytoplankton that are massive carbon sinks, right? They're a plant. And so not only, as Ashlan said, does the ice have an albedo effect reflecting radiation, not only does that cooling water flow through the global conveyor belt, thermohaline current they call it, that helps to keep our planet cool. Think of the poles as the HVAC system of our planet. But the krill and the phytoplankton and all the organisms that live there, not only then also do they help feed the ocean food web, but they're also critical to maintaining a carbon sequestration process that, as we disrupt it, we just exacerbate climate change. And as you can see here, the headlines are shocking. I mean, there's constantly reading about how the Antarctica is being impacted, how massive ice sheets are breaking off. I'm sure speakers have already spoken about this. Of course, this year we hit a record temperature, 20 degrees Celsius, so about in the 60s in Antarctica, which is unheard of on what should be, a frozen continent. And so what do we do about it? Well, in the last 5 minutes that we have, we just wanted to share, again, a little bit more about this idea, make you aware of this campaign to protect Antarctica and establish these 3 marine protected areas. It's part of the 30 by 30 goal, which is to establish and protect 30% of not only the ocean, but also of land by 2030. Part of the critical tool that we have in our tool belt to stop this catastrophic decline in biodiversity. See, more than half of the world's biodiversity has disappeared in 40 years in our lifetime, as Ashlan said earlier. So I want you to check out 30 by 30. And because they work, marine protected areas are part of this campaign in a recognition that, yes, we need to establish sustainable fisheries, we need to reduce carbon emissions and all these other things we have to do. But one simple tool that we know works is establishing marine protected areas.
And we've seen these with our own eyes in multiple places around the world, from the nuclear wasteland of the Marshall Islands, where literally the United States set off 23 nuclear bombs and killed everything for miles. Just 60 years later, when Philippe and I went after the last blast, the ocean had recovered and it was flourishing. We've seen it happen in Cabo Pulmo, Mexico, where
it's flourishing because nobody's been there for 6 years. It became a de facto marine protected area because of the radiation.
We've seen it in Cabo Pulmo, Mexico, which was a locally led marine protected area where it was a sleepy fishing village. All of the fishermen banded together when they realized they were having to go out further and further and further to find fish. They banded together and made it a no-take marine protected area, and now it's one of the most beautiful places on the Baja Peninsula.
Yeah.
And they were able to increase their biomass by 300% in the first 10 or 15 years.
10 years, yeah.
So it really, truly is incredible. This has happened in this is happening in the Mediterranean. This is happening in Europe. So we know marine protected areas work. And we're not saying that we have to protect all of the ocean. We just need to protect 30% and these biological hotspots. Just give it a break so the fish can come back and nature can come back and thrive. Because we don't want to sustain our ocean at its current levels. We want to go back to abundance. Yeah. And marine protected areas will take us there.
Yeah, if there's anything we want people to kind of wipe out of their minds, is this idea of sustainability. We want to renew and restore the ocean, because it's not just, the way it is right now, we're 90% collapse in shark species and large animals, large pelagics like whales and swordfish, etc. Where we see 90% of fisheries, fish are overfished today. We see half the world's coral reefs have disappeared. That's not. We don't want that to be sustainable. We want to utilize the tools that we have, here, marine protected areas, in order to restore the ocean to abundance. So these are the areas: the Weddell Sea, the East Antarctic Peninsula, and the Antarctic Peninsula, East Antarctic, Weddell Sea, and the Antarctic Peninsula. And these are very, very important because there's a big meeting of CAMLAR, which is the global institution that many countries are signatories to. Anybody that has business in Antarctica are signatories to, that manages Antarctica. And they've got a big meeting coming up, likely this fall, we hope, depending on COVID. where they're going to be discussing and voting on whether or not to establish these MPAs. And these MPAs would be the single largest act of ocean conservation in history. And it's absolutely critical. We cannot achieve 30 by 30, of which dozens of countries around the world have signed on. We cannot achieve 30 by 30 without these series of MPAs around Antarctica. Not only the physical element of 30 by 30, but also the spirit of 30 by 30, because this is one of the most biodiverse hotspots and it's under threat. So with that, our time, I know Joe asked to make sure we gave a few minutes for Q&A if there are any, but we did just kind of want to leave it here and mention to you again something that Ashlan said that's so important is, what we want from all of you is recognizing how important Antarctica is, recognizing that there are tools at our disposal to protect it, and that what we need from you, all of you watching, is to be informed, to be aware, support 30 by 30, this concept in general, but then also get involved, visit Antarctica 2020. You can find out more on our social media as well about how you can support the petitions and the work to establish Antarctica. And in particular, every country involved in CAMLAR has signed off on this idea and is supportive. The United States, the European Union, etc. The only countries right now that are particularly standing out and holding back from supporting these 3 protected areas around Antarctica are Russia and China. So any of you that are there, have influence there, or know people there, or citizens of those places who are watching, this is where we need to be particularly applying pressure and making sure that we support the United States and the European Union to continue to apply pressure to Russia and China to establish these MPAs and get on board.
Because again, how amazing would it be if when we all come together, all of us, all humans on this planet, we came together, we protected these 3 areas. And again, like Philippe said, it would be the largest act of ocean conservation in history. And that is just something amazing that we can all be a part of.
So with that, we're going to go back. And in case there are any questions, conversation, because I know we're on a tight, Joe's got us on a tight schedule. We want to respect the next speakers. And so that's it for us.
Well, bravo, Ashlan and Philippe. I think that was absolutely brilliant. You can't go wrong, can you, with focusing on the Antarctic and then linking it with all of these other global issues and how they interconnect. Because if there's one thing we've learned since the COVID-19 pandemic times is that everything is interconnected. We absolutely do hear those magic words, don't we, that we all would have been celebrating, that we've got people understanding that our health is reliant on everybody else's health, which in turn is reliant on the health of the planet. Now, we never would have seen that in the press a few years ago. And I suppose one benefit of this extraordinary pandemic is that it's given us that sense that we need to reset our values. And I love the way you can do that through looking at Antarctica. For those of you who haven't seen the project, there's the website right there. It's easy to remember, antarctica2020.org. I've been looking through it today, and I particularly like the resources page, because this is the page where you're pretty much handing it on a plate to decision makers, aren't you?
Yeah,
it's out, you've made the case. So I encourage everybody, we've got people here from 82 countries, maybe more since we've last checked. Do exactly what Ashlan and Philippe have asked you to do. Have a quick look on the site. And Philippe there mentioned CAMLAR. I'm glad you mentioned CAMLAR. This is the Commission for the Conservation of Antarctic Marine Living Resources. That's the group, that's the key group that has to designate these regions to make the political change. And it's a bit of sort of chicken and egg routine, is that it has to be 100% agreed within CAMLAR.
Yeah.
Everybody's feeling pressure, naturally. And you're right. I think Antarctica 2020 can significantly pull the right amount of pressure, focused on is it October, the meeting, Philippe? I forget.
I think the current plan is October, but, last year they were supposed to meet. It kind of got messed up. They did a virtual meeting. It's the same, like everyone's talking about the COP. And so we'll see, because unfortunately not a lot of these kinds of conservation things get done, as you know, Paul, in the virtual meetings. Most of this kind of work happens in the side halls, the side meetings, the conversations to really put the pressure on everybody when they're all in person. But that is the goal of CAMLAR in October, where we're hoping, certainly that this will be proposed, and we hope that everybody can support it. But currently China and Russia are still holding out. But Russia has an opportunity. Russia was the first on the continent. As you know, Paul, Admiral Bellinghausen, 200 years ago, Russia has a tremendous opportunity to have leadership and recognize. I mean, I think now more than ever, as Ashlan was saying, with this pandemic, we all got to come together. Like, we all need this kind of a win. I think the global community needs this win. We need to recognize, wow, if this can happen, we are well on our way towards 30 by 30, and maintain Antarctica as this place that represents an opportunity for us to be brothers and sisters in humanity, and to work together in science and peace, as opposed to utilizing these places as these, political tools of geopolitical, essential power and these and conflict. So that's really extending what Antarctica already means, and it's in the name: the conservation of Antarctic marine living resources, conservation of Kevlar. Come on, people! Like, it's in your name to do this work. So anyway, that's the goal, and we want everybody to.
It just couldn't be better. I think it's a great opportunity, and I love the way that you've linked it to what the continent is. It is a continent for science. There's very unique, Antarctic Treaty. As you say, your grandfather Jacques Cousteau worked on the Madrid Protocol, which was the great environmental protocol that keeps Antarctica safe, and it also stopped mining and drilling and extraction of resources. So this is the way Antarctica is, a very unique part of the planet. So why not? I think you've done a brilliant job here. Focus on Antarctica to look at the Great 30 by 30 campaign, which is got so much traction. What is it? 60-odd countries, High Ambition Coalition.
Yeah, at least. Yep.
I mean, we're on our way, and we're in that sweet spot for decision making. We've heard here at the Global Biodiversity Festival. I do agree with you, Philippe. It's nothing like a proper in-person conference, because those to me were waypoints or lighthouses on the route where we could have a meeting, and people like you and I could have a chat in a corridor, or get the sense and the feeling of where the next challenge was, or how do we celebrate successes, or where's the next bit of pressure. And of course, we're all doing it on laptops, which seems ridiculous. Such an important issue, and we're talking to each other on laptops. But you've found, I think, a very key way to break through that laptop thing. Let's focus on Antarctica. Let's focus on October, and build up the right amount of pressure and political support and business support and influential support to make the decision happen. So, my hat goes off to you. I think it's an absolutely brilliant project. And for everybody listening, however many countries it is right now, however many thousands of you that are watching, thanks very much for watching. But remember that website, Antarctica2020.org. Go in there. And the first place I like is the resources one. Go to resources. That's handing it to decision makers on a plate. Well done.
Exactly. If this is going to happen,
it's really just 2 votes. That's all we need. 2 votes to make the largest act of ocean conservation in history. 2 votes is all we need.
Yeah. If we don't achieve Antarctica protection, we can't achieve 30 by 30, certainly the spirit of 30 by 30. And we're not going to get a handle on climate change. Antarctica is absolutely fundamental to this crisis. And unless we figure out how to protect that place and can, make every effort to do so, we're headed down a dangerous path. So thank you for watching and for giving us the opportunity to chat with you, to see you, Paul. It's been so long, and to support this terrific festival.
Brilliant. Well, thanks again, both of you, and good luck. I know you've got a new one coming pretty soon, I think, or a new one coming.
We do. Yep. We got one coming, a new baby in August, and a 2-year-old that we put down for a nap before we got on the video.
Okay. Well, once the new nipper is in and established, let's find each other and go for a dive.
Oh, please. I miss diving so much.
Please.
All right,
my friend.
it's a deal.
Thank you. Thanks, Joe, and everybody behind the scenes. You're terrific. We love you.
Take it easy, guys. Brilliant to see you. See you.
Great to see you.
Well, there you go. That was a good session. It was so good to see my old diving mate, Philippe, there. I haven't met Ashlan before. It was nice to meet. And at some point, with any luck, we'll get back into the sea together.